Hey everyone, Dana here. Some people might think Canada, the US, pretty much the same, right? No, they're really not. These two countries do have a lot in common, but they also have a lot of differences. So today, I'll look at some interesting differences put together by me, an American who has not yet visited Canada, but would definitely love to change that in the future. I would really love to visit Canada one day. Okay, so just quick little technicality point here. Technically, I actually have been to Canada once for a quick stopover in Vancouver on my way to Alaska, but I don't really think stopovers count. And I think when I was 5 years old, I went with my family to Nova Scotia, but most of what I remember from that trip is eating Oreos. So I would still say that for all intents and purposes of this video, I still have not yet, visited Canada. Canada has hockey and the US has football. America has the bald eagle and Canada has the beaver, which makes an appearance on the Canadian nickel. And Canada used to have the maple leaf on their penny, and I know that because when I lived in the US, I noticed that Canadian pennies often ended up mixed up in our coins, and I'd get them as change at the store from a vending machine. But since 2013, no more penny in Canada. They got rid of them. Can't have a comparison video without food, right? And let's start with the obvious one. Canada maple syrup. Nobody makes maple syrup like Canada does, although Vermont does try its hardest. Most of the world's maple syrup comes from Canada. And on the US side, I don't know if there's one food product that comes from the US that we are really known for around the world in that same way that Canada is known for maple syrup. Idaho potatoes, maybe? Or Florida oranges? But Canada grows potatoes too, and the US even imports some of them, according to the USDA, mostly in the form of frozen potato products and frozen French fries. Speaking of which, I've heard that in Canada, coming out of Quebec, there's something called poutine, which is French fries topped with cheese curds and gravy. And I guess the American equivalent to that would be chili cheese fries? I love chili cheese fries. And even without visiting Canada and living all the way down in South Florida, about as far as you can get in America from the Canadian border, I have still heard of Tim Hortons, known for their coffee and donuts in Canada. And in the US, the two big donut shops are Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kreme. Canada has two official languages, English and French, while at the federal level in the US, there is no official language whatsoever. But the two most spoken languages in the US are English and Spanish. In both countries, there are many different regional English accents spoken around the country. As far as individual English words, or in this case, sounds go, Canadians are known for their A at the end of sentences, and I'd say the American equivalent to that is, It's nice weather, eh? It's nice weather, huh? Also in Canada, a hat like this, and also I think a hat like this is called a toque, whereas in the US, I'm pretty sure we just call these winter hats. A restroom is called a washroom in Canada, and Canadians call candy bars chocolate bars. And actually, I realized in my video on trying German versus American chocolate bars that I also sometimes call them chocolate bars. And English in Canada still holds on to some of the influence of British English, spelling color and flavor with a U, for example, and center with R-E, whereas in America, it's E-R at the end. And to me, it also sounds like some words are pronounced a little bit more British in Canada than in America. Like, whereas Americans tend to say pants, I've noticed some Canadians saying it more like pants, so a bit of a softer A. But again, accents do differ regionally, and I'm really bad at doing accents, so that was my best. To me, it's like, in America, it's like pants, with kind of a nasally A versus pants. Yeah, a little bit softer. The US has states, 50 of them, while Canada is made up of 10 provinces and 3 territories. Canada is bigger than the US in total area, but not by much. It's pretty close. But when it comes to people, about 9 times as many people live in the US as Canada. 9 times! That's a lot more people. And as far as the climate in Canada goes, well, basically it goes from cold to really freaking freezing cold, while the climate in the US goes from cold to really freaking sweating hot. All right, getting into everyone's favorite subject now, politics. The big one here is that the US has a president while Canada has a prime minister. Unlike the US, Canada did not fight a war of independence from Great Britain to become a country. And even to this day, even though now Canada is independent from the UK, the Queen is still Canada's head of state, and she's featured on their money. What this means for politics is that the Queen is Canada's head of state and the Prime Minister is the head of government. 2 people for 2 roles. In Germany, just for reference, the president is the elected head of state while the chancellor is the head of government. But in the US, the president is both the head of state and the head of government. Also, the US has a 2-party system of government, while Canada has a multi-party system. And in Canada, there is universal health care, whereas the US does not have universal health care, and the health care that people do have in the US is a mix of private insurance and public support for low-income families and the elderly. And in 2005, Canada became the 4th country in the world to federally legalize same-sex marriage. The 3 countries before it, by the way, were Spain, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Same-sex marriage was legalized in the whole of the US almost exactly 10 years later in 2015. So my question for you is, what other differences between Canada and the US do you know of, and what do you think about the differences that I mentioned? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching and liking and commenting and subscribing. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I also hope that you will enjoy the bloopers that are coming up next. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen. The big one here is that the US has a president while canister, I almost said canister, as far as individual, but they also have a lot of differences. Oh, we've been recording the whole time. Whoops.